Well, both of us are dressed in black purely because, a loss to whichever team that happens today, they could pretty much, say that it's funeral of their World Cup chances, because from here on, if you lose one game, you would be required to win the next six. And if you want to win the World Cup, you'll probably have to win the next eight. It's not something that happens, quite
often.
normally. So it is pretty much fair to say that I think whosoever loses today will probably from here on would be probably playing spoil sport. Although for Australia, we could
Mm.
say that they've got two tough fixtures in their first two games, so they might still have a chance. But don't think we can say the same for Sri Lanka. What do you think?
No, I still feel even if they lose this one, I expect a lot of randomness to happen going deep into the World Cup. तो ऐसा हो सकता है कि potentially two teams go away with the points and they get a lot of wins, but the next two could be just scraping for that one win, scraping for that another run, net run return bit. So again, I'm not for the broadcaster. I'm just saying for a normal cricket fan, I want more teams to be vying for that bottom two, or not the bottom two, but the three, third, and fourth spot. So let's see. Too early, but yeah, a win today will definitely help.
Well, yesterday we pretty much had the first upset. I'm not even sure if we can call it an upset, given how Afghanistan has been around for some time now. But
Yeah.
can we expect something similar to happen today? Because Sri Lanka have only won one game versus Australia in the World Cups, and that one game is probably the biggest of
The
their
biggest.
cricketing history.
Yeah, and see, it's just tells you how much at times cute the ODI format is. That uh, you are hearing so many first coming through this World Cup, and also the point about the Afghanistan versus England. See, upset is something that you see coming. I don't see. I don't think anybody saw Afghanistan beating England. So that to me was an upset. It doesn't matter what rankings are going to tell you, because rankings are arbitrary at times. They're as good as the fans' memory. So in terms of that, whoever wins today, even if it is Sri Lanka, you will say it's the battle between the top bottom two teams at this point of time. So whoever wins, you will say, is it an upset? No, it's not. So hopefully Sri Lanka can put up a good score. They have done decently well, and this pitch also I think should help Sri Lanka compete. But their bowling is something that has to stand up, because it is something both Chanaka and Kusal Mendes touched in their press conferences, that they are used to a certain type of decks. It is something that we've discussed with Bangladesh as well. So they have to get that right. Yeah, they have to be able to adapt quicker. And South Africa showed that you can defend the score here. So maybe conditions aren't that always great for batting. So let's see.
Yeah. Now before we wait for the toss and the subsequent 11s to come out, the update from the Sri Lankan camp is that Dashun Chanaka is out and Kusal Mendes would be
Yeah.
the captain, and he'll be replaced by Chamika Karunaratne, who's actually been the player of the match twice in the last four games between these two sides. So Nikhil, a good choice for fantasy today, or do you think maybe because he's not played enough of cricket may not be the best choice in that regard?
Well, in the recent past, you've seen team make a few changes, and both those players have gone on to make a very vital contribution in their sides winning. Be it Abdullah Shafiq or be it Ikram Ali Khil yesterday. So you may never know, especially while batting first. If you feel Chamika can get a decent amount of runs, and then he can use those cutters and variations well if the deck is holding up before the dew comes in. So of course, a very handy choice. With Sri Lanka, you have to be very sure of who will bowl where. So once the 11s are out, maybe that will be even more clear. But again, even while bowling second, bowling first, you could take a risk on Chamika if you want to, because if he's there to bowl 4 5 overs, you expect him to take at least a couple.
Now coming to Australia, see, at this point of time, after the two games that they've played, it's difficult to point out, what is that one weakness, because they seem to be struggling in all three departments. Whether they've not crossed 200 runs in the two innings. Their bowlers have also suffered a little bit. Glenn Maxwell was their best bowler in that last game, and they've dropped a lot of catches. So,
Yeah.
what is that one thing that would be amongst a plethora of worries that they have right now? What do you think is their biggest worry at this point of time?
I think the biggest worry I feel at times has been the lack of. I don't know what the word is to call it. Okay, sorry to get distracted. Sri Lanka won the toss and opted to bat, so that is a very good thing. Firstly, from Sri Lanka's POV, for Australia, I think it's just been the potency of the attack with both bat and ball. Now we discussed something on our off air about Smith not converting starts. It is not something that you expect from him. And then I think it's also about the planning with identity that okay, they wanted head up top. Now head is gone, so they pushed Mars to open. But then that's also got Marnus into the side on the back of runs versus South Africa. And then you have all rounders who are doing something but not doing a lot. So if you see, you can probably club Australia and England that for the first time in a World Cup that you feel that maybe that lack of clarity or the lack of role definition is there, which is very, very evident with these two sides that they are not able to nail those things. That what is exactly the role that this guy is going to do? I mean, all of us talked about Smith and Manas not batting together because they could get stuck, but it's happened already. So how do you break that? Because Manas did well against South Africa, but you expect that role clarity to be there with Australia, and that hasn't happened. Cummins' form, though he's someone who likes to do well against Sri Lanka, so very interested to see how he comes through. It's that bowling role as well. You'd had a second spinner for long, but now you suddenly don't have it. How is it fair to you to not have a second spinner at all and expect Maxwell to do that job, who's also coming back from an injury? So I think they've relied a lot on individuals just stepping up, which may not always happen, and maybe that contingency plan that we often expect to have from Australia that hasn't come through.
Funny you mentioned that, there is relation between both England and Australia lacking clarity. I see one other parallel between the two teams, and that is the reliance on all rounders, and all those all rounders not doing what you'd want them to do, especially in their primary jobs. Maxwell's bowling well but not batting well. With Stoinis again, he's not batting well, and his bowling is not being used as much.
Yeah,
And again, the parallels are similar with Vokes not bowling well, not picking up wickets, still contributing a little bit with the bat. Livingston not batting well but bowling well. So there are a lot of those parallels. Anyway, let's have a look at the 11s. The toss has happened, and you said that Sri Lanka have won it. I am actually looking for the
yeah,
11s.
yeah. I think I can see Australia 11. It's Marner, Smash, Smith, Maxwell, Josh, Glenn. It's pretty much unchanged as expected. So that is good to see. Waiting to see what changes Sri Lanka have.
I
And
think
it
Lahiru
could be
Kumara's in.
okay. Yep, Lahiru Kumara could be, which Australia is definitely unchanged. That is there. And Chamika and Lahiru are in for Shanaka and Patirana. So
Shanaka
those
and
are
Patel.
those obvious changes there. But okay, they've got two bowling all rounders, like one bowler and one proper again all rounder to replace Shanaka. So that is as good as it gets. And Mendes is expecting turn in the second innings. Now, it is interesting because in the last game we saw Maharaj bowl well, but in the later half you saw Dew coming in Lucknow. So maybe then the expectation is that it should slow down and then it should help Sri Lanka if they put up a score in around 260, 270. Don't target 300, and I don't think they will target 300 as well. So let's see how Australia go about that.
What do you make of Lahiru Kumara coming in? Do you think that the long boundaries here can, especially the long square boundaries, can allow him to bowl the way he likes to do? Because we have also seen, he's someone who prefers to bowl a little shorter than what lengths you would associate with other paces. So do you think the ground dimensions could help him do that, or it's not the right batting lineup to bowl those kind of lengths?
See, I think it is something that I felt about Mark Wood as well yesterday. And another pacer who was bowling very well in the 4 to 6 meter mark. And he was bowling short. It's something we discussed with Harris Roth as well. Okay, when you have that extra pace and you're getting bounce, you probably want to be a bit more good length than very short or back of length, so that that variation can come into play. And this is from
Nabi's
what I read.
wicket yesterday is a good example.
Exactly. So that length, you got that surprise because it was a good length. And then he got extra bound. If it was short, he would have been pulling, maybe he would have got a top edge. So again, that shot also changes. So that's where I feel Lahiru Kumara on a two-pace wicket, today it's a huge wicket. So that could really come into play. That those handy variations can come in, but the length has to be spot on and the line as well, because you don't expect Warner, Smith, Marsh, Maxwell to be troubled by pace, but they can be troubled by uneven bounce, and that's where you have to get into that lineup and length very early, so that everybody's then a bit more skeptical, because Rabada did the same thing in the previous encounter, where Lungi and Giri bowled that very good length. They were not able to hit the gaps, and then you could saw the miss, the the fall shots coming through. So uh, for Sri Lanka, they have to hit together as a unit, but that is later. First, they'll have to bat very well.
What do you make of Sri Lanka's batting depth now? Because Karunaratne is slated at number 7, Velalage is at 8.
Yeah.
Do you think that strengthens their batting or not really? I think now with Karunaratne in, at least Kusal Mendes, the captain, will have one more bowling option and he could actually take that call when to use that bowling option, because we've seen Shanaka to be a reluctant bowler at times. But what do you think of this? How does the dynamic change in terms of both the bowling and batting?
See, I'm very interested to see how Kusal Mendes leads, because again, from whatever little you see in the LPL, you feel he's someone who's looking to be very aggressive. Shanak at the other end, at times we felt that he's looking to get the overs out from the fifth bowler. So that is something that will be very critical to see. Maybe the score on the board will also dictate how they have to bowl. But as you said, even with the batting, this is the game where you want Kusal and Nissanka to give them a decent start. क्योंकि if they get that, you don't want always the pressure to be on Kusal and Sadira Samaravikrama to be able to rebuild. And you have Asalanka, DDS hasn't done much. So if Karunaratne and Velalage are there at 7 and 8, it should give them that confidence early on. Okay, just take just that bit more time. Be 45 for one, or 50 for one if you want to, rather than just being two. So I think that
60 for
pacing of
3.
the innings, so it's very key to get that balance right. Okay, do not get too into a shell, but if the conditions are such that okay, 45 or 50 is par, so be it. So it is just assessing those conditions that will be very key, because Smith said in the pre-match chat that it was tacky to begin with. So it may not be easier to hit in the power play. So while a lot of us do talk about setting the game up in the power play, you have to be sure, okay, if you're not losing wickets, if the bad balls are there, you're putting them away. And then you can go into deep into the innings and see how this is going to pan out. So the start could be crucial, because Kusal Mendes has played a lot of shots and it is good. You want him to be aggressive. And if he's doing that after a platform, it will be even better for Sri Lanka, because then you expect them to get the power score even if dew comes about. So that could really set the game up nicely if they get a good start from Nisanka and Kusal.
Now, Nikhil, we have some numbers here to discuss, which is Steve
Yeah,
Smith versus the opponents in the World Cup. I'll just have this overlay here. And,
yeah.
against India, he averages 73.3. I reckon it's got to do with the 100 that he had in Sydney in 2015. But after that, against Sri Lanka, although it's a small sample size of two innings, uh, he's had 250s, 199. So, yeah, I mean, what I want to understand from you is that how important would he be in terms of the chase, because somewhere we do expect the pitch to be slower. Do you do you think he could really counter those Sri Lankan spinners today?
Yeah, you'll hope so. And again, it's not that he's looked troubled as much, or phased by what he's facing. So the surprise for many of us with him has been how he's gotten into a good start and then just suddenly just gotten out, which is something that you don't expect a lot. The previous dismissal that with South Africa, I don't think that was out. I'll still stand by that. It looked more missing, similar with what happened with Johnny Bairstow yesterday, and he looked good in that little period of play as well versus South Africa. He was able to hit on the up, was pulling well as well. So he's gotten into the innings, but maybe today is the day where the pressure is such that Australia have to win this one. Maybe that is what could get the best out of it. And sometimes you just get people to step up when the stakes are higher. So let's see if that happens with Smith.
uh, Another thing that is here to be discussed is, and you've talked about this player a lot, and Aditya Anand's done some wordplay here. The start will be Kusil because we have crucial Mendes coming in. On that note, are there any like on that note, are there any key battles that we can look at before you go? I'll have to play this thing because बनाया है तो चलाना पड़ेगा.
Yes.
Yes.
So, in terms of key battles, it is very, very obvious that everybody would have discussed the DDS versus Warner, dismissed him 4 times, and all of that. Dixon hasn't troubled him much. But what I'm very keen to look at today is how left arm spin goes versus Australia. Now, it troubled them in the first game. They were stalled by it. Not many runs came of it. Maharaj bowled a very tidy spell, and the one player who's coming at number 4 for them in Marnus, he's also had some trouble facing the Dunit Velalage. Average of 12, 2 dismissals in 37 balls for 24 runs. There's a good graphic from cricket.com as well. You should definitely check that out. So that battle, I think, in the second innings could be very, very crucial for Australia to counter, because if it is slow before the dew comes in, there is again so much will miss him in terms of no left-hander apart from David Warner, but you can't force fit one for the sake of it. So a lot of varieties for Velalage to target, and that's where I think that could be a very, very crucial matchup to look out for, and again potentially a very good X factor to look at.
Yeah, if I'm not wrong, Veralage had Australia in some kind of trouble in that bilateral series that happened in Sri Lanka last year, right?
Yeah, I mean, suddenly I'm not able to recollect which all players he dismissed, but of course, whenever he's played well, I'm sure he's done well. He took a 3 for in the last game. That is something that I know for sure. The 3 for 42 in those 10 overs. And yeah, but then it was a different game, different wicket. Wicket will be very different today.
Now, coming to Sri Lanka, we have another graphic here which is about most dismissals to left arm pace. Now, we see Pathum Nissanka there. Now, uh, my biggest issue with Pathum Nissanka has been, how he's not really converted his starts. I mean, he's had 42 innings, and I was just checking his numbers. In those 42 innings, he has had 13 scores of 50 plus, but he's only scored 300 for that. And he's had some 18 or 19 scores of 20 plus, like 18 scores between 20 and 19. Now if there is someone who's had a 50 plus score in roughly every third game, you would expect their average to be at least in the 40s if not more, but he has an average of 37. So what do you think he needs to change, or do you think firstly it's a temperament issue or it's a technical issue that gets caught up with a particular bowling type, or do you just think that because he's young he'll learn on the job, and you eventually see him converting those starts into some very substantial scores?
Yeah, I'm hoping that happens, because even against Janssen, if you saw, he got a very good ball. So won't blame you much for that. The problem that has suddenly occurred with Nissanka is, as you said, the starts. You expect the dismissals then to be of a very good ball, or a setup that has troubled him a lot. But most of the times it hasn't been such. Even in the previous game, he just hit a short ball from Shadab straight to backward point. So those are the dismissals that you don't want to see from a set batter, because on decks that are difficult to bat deep, you want the set batter who's gotten starts to bat really deep in the innings. And today, I think, would be a very good day for Nissanka to do that. So play out Stark, because again, I know he will be troubled by Hazelwood's income in deeper as well. But if he's able to see through that first 4 5 overs, he's someone who can hit a lot of gaps and a lot of boundaries early in the power play, which could ease the pressure on the other Kusals, be it at 1 or 3. So that will just ease the game. And then with Sri Lanka, there are a lot of batters who can play their shots. So Nisanka is the kind of guy that you want to just bat at one end. You bat at the rate that you want, 85, 90, it's okay. Others will cover up for your strike rate, but they need somebody like him to bat for 25, 30 overs, so that it just lays a very good platform for the 6, 7, 8 to just come in and then have a go, have a go in that regard. So I think Stark, Hazelwood, very, very big early on. Besses both Kusal Perera and Nisanka, but if Nisanka is able to see through, uh, I don't see there is a temperamental problem there. It's just about learning quickly and adapting to surfaces with him is what I feel.
Fair enough. While you were mentioning those key battles, you mentioned Veralage versus the batters. Now, because there's only one left-hander, do you think, given how the pitch is, and there are decent numbers for DDS versus Warner, do you think Sri Lanka can flirt with the idea of throwing the ball to DDS early on, or maybe even Tikshana, to try and get rid of Warner and then open up the innings?
See, Thikshana is played enough, and he hasn't. He's gotten out to him only once, if I remember correctly. And I would actually just want Madhushankar to come in and take early wickets. That's what you saw him do in the previous game. And even yesterday, Fazala Faruqi was able to get that new ball moment under lights. So that is something that I hope that they do. And then if you have another pacer in your ranks, uh, in that first 2 3 overs, I'll be more than happy to give them a go there, because again, maybe the call can be taken basis conditions, but if there is whatever swing there is there, you would want to make the most of it in whichever way you can. So you have Chamika Karunaratne who you can go to, but the only bit here is there is only one. Either you have Lahiru Kumara, who I feel might do better with the older ball. So probably the first change guy can be that. But that is something that we'll have to see, because invariably one spinner will bowl, whether it is DDS or Thikshana. I just hope they adapt quickly and don't wait for a 5-5 over spell from each of the bowlers to change. So that's where the captaincy bit will also be crucial. But Madhushanka, with the new ball to Mitchell Marsh and David Warner, he could really set the game up there.
Now, Nikhil had already mentioned his X Factor, which did not allow me to play the sting. But I'll play the sting, ask him about the
Yeah.
Australia's X Factor, and I'll also talk about my X Factor. My so,
You go,
Nikhil,
Paji.
okay,
You go, Paji first.
I think my mind's actually you know oscillating between two X factors for Sri Lanka. One is Kusal Pereira, and the other is Charita Lanka. Now, Kusal Pereira hasn't done as much in recent times, but he's the sort of batter I think he'll enjoy the bounce on this pitch, which could allow him to play those cross-batted shots to the Australian pacers. So that is one thing that I want to look forward to, and I really feel that if he can, give Sri Lanka that explosive start, like how Nikhil mentioned that it allows Nisanka to settle in, then it will also test Cummings, the captain, in terms of how he rotates his bowlers. So that is one thing that I'm looking at. But Charat Asalanka, I watched that game where he scored that 100, and it was a very good 100.
Yeah.
Sri Lanka had a decent start, but then they lost two quick wickets. But Charit Asalanka just controlled the game so well and had an outstanding 100, which actually led to a Sri Lankan victory. And Jaida Lanka has yet to set the stage on fire in this World Cup. Got out very early in that last game against South Africa. Had a 50, but it was more about catching up with the net run rate rather than actually winning the game, because the games was done.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah, going for one of them, trying to go as Nikhil would say Jai Mata Di, and saying Kusal Pereira could actually be that X factor for Australia. I don't know. I had Marcus Stoinis, but his bowling wasn't really used. So
Yeah.
sticking with my MVP Maxwell, hoping that he scores some runs, because he also has had decent run versus Sri Lanka. 2015 World Cup, scored that outstanding 100. Yes, it was a different pitch, but yeah, I just feel that it's time for Maxwell to come into his own. Nikhil, your X factor for Australia?
Yeah, it was pretty much going to be the same guy. Again, a lot of decent amount of lefties as well. For again, even without that, he's a second spinner, and he's actually outbowled Zampa enough in that sense. So Maxwell was definitely a good choice. But uh, Jaimat Adi jana hi hai, so I'll go with Pat Cummins. I think Pat Cummins in the role that he is playing today. You see the lineup, you expect okay, they will probably be careful against Hazelwood and Stark. Maxwell has bowled well. So the opportunity there then lies for Pat Cummins to be the guy that they go after. And if Pat Cummins is able to hold his own, he could end up with a very good 3 for today, which could really boost his confidence. And the unit should also feel a lot better about him and themselves. So Pat Cummins for Australia, and Dunit Velalage, I already said it, for Sri Lanka, क्योंकि enough right-handers, and again very much based on conditions. So you could go with Chamika Karunaratne if you feel he'll be a proper first game in and player of the performance. But expect Velalage to be contributing well with the ball, and Pat Cummins as well. So those two from my end.
I Before we move on to the next section, I want to ask you: Do you what do you expect from Adam Zampa in this game? Because like you rightly mentioned, he's been outbowled by Glenn Maxwell. Really did not have a good game versus India in Chennai. Last game also, I felt that he was bowling a little too fuller. Do you think playing at the same venue and seeing how the pitch behaved will allow him to bowl better? Or probably maybe change his lines, because I also did not think that he bowled enough googlies in that game. So something for him to work on.
Yeah, and I think we've also heard Finch say that there are a couple of niggles there, which I think could be very, very crucial. And especially if it's a hip niggle, which is what I read, then it could not be easy for him also to be able to bowl what he wants to at the right speeds. So that could very well be playing a part. And today is the game where I expect Pacers to set it up well for Zampa. And again, the usage, I think they've at times just waited a lot on Adam Zampa to come in, maybe for the ball to get old, or the situation to be perfectly right for people to go after him. So maybe that can also be taken care of, his usage. And see, the problem today for Zampa would be if he's up against Kusal Mendes who's firing and Sadira who's played spin very well, it could really not be easy. So they'll have to get his entry point right as well, which is something that we often say about batters, but for bowlers as well. If he is able to get entry point right, settle into a good rhythm, maybe take an over or two, just find that spot and stay there. Because it's something that we discussed with Rashid, for England, that he's varied his pace as per venues. He's found the right pace to bowl at. May not have always gotten the wickets, but he's still held his own. So that is what I expect from Zampa. That maybe just don't look for wickets too much. Get into a groove, get bowl in the areas that you want to, and the wickets will be a byproduct of putting a lot of pressure with that. So low expectations from that angle, but crucial game for him also to come good, especially while bowling first.
Another question that has come in, and it's a question that I like. It's from our very own Akash Subramaniam. He says, could Sri Lanka have picked Himanta instead of many pacers? Australia are struggling against spin anyway. Now I have not seen Dushan Himanta a lot. You must have seen him in LPL. Any thoughts on this?
Yes, yeah, I wouldn't have minded that. But again, the problem is if Dew comes in and then you have four spinners, it could really get a lot more tricky to control the game. So in that sense, and because the ball was also doing a bit, I said, as with Lahiru Kumara, as I said, if it's a two-pace wicket, if he gets his length right, it could really be very handy to get them with pace, because that's where the game was set up by South Africa as well versus them. It was the pacers up top who did the damage very early, be it Jansen or Ngidi or Rabada. So I felt they're just probably just trying to cover that angle, and there is too much inexperience. With Hemanta also, I trust him to come good later on, but we saw what happened with inexperience in the last game. So maybe they are just banking on people who've played in the past and people who've played against them to be able to adapt better. So you already have three spinners in Thikshana, DDS, and Velalage, and then you have good three pace options in Chanaka, in Karunaratne, Lahiru Kumara, and Madhushanka. So I think in that the balance is there. Maybe they were bowling first, but then you can't control the toss. This is not an impact player as of now.
On that Pacers bit, Pranav Anand has a comment. He says South Africa had taller, quicker bowlers to extract so much from the surface
Yeah,
under lights. Don't know if Sri Lanka has that. They should hope that Australia don't get off to a flyer so that spinners can control the game. Interesting bit.
yeah. Yeah, and which is why again Lahiru Kumara natural length is what you expect, similar to what Rabada and Ngidi bowl. Sorry, I'm not aware of the exact height of Lahiru Kumara to make the comment on his height, but I'm expecting that to be taken care of by spin control in the game more. So the approach to me has to be you look for wickets versus one end and look for control from the other end, because it will not be possible to do both from both ends with Sri Lanka's current bowling attack.
Yeah, Santa De Cruz goes on to ask that which team has more pressure going to this match. I feel it's Australia more than Sri Lanka, because Sri Lanka have what now, four players, or yeah, four, pretty much four players who are who could have been a part of the first 11 who are missing. So I definitely feel that the pressure's on Australia. And even if
Yeah,
this was a full strength Sri Lankan side, give the record overall head to head and the head to head in World Cups, definitely I feel the pressures on Australia. Before I move on to the did you know section, I completely forgot this, but
mhm,
guys, please like the stream. Only
yeah,
two of us trying to pull the weight together, doing everything, which might make things look a little haphazard. So just for our motivation, आज किसी player के
thank you.
numbers नहीं, कुछ wicket नहीं, just for our own motivation, please press the like button. Now
Yeah,
I'll be moving on to the did you know section.
cheers. Yep.
Yeah, so the did you know section is, did you know Kumar Sangakkara 101 is the only Sri Lankan with a century in the 100th ODI, and he achieved it in against Australia in 2004. I thought it would be something related to that 2015 World Cup game where you know I think he was in the middle. Was it that game where he made four into four?
2015. Yeah,
Yeah, like
2015.
that was the fourth game, right? Or was it the Bangladesh game?
Nay, that I don't remember which game it is, but yeah,
But
100th
yeah,
ODI. Who's playing 100th ODI today? If I've completely missed it,
is someone playing 100th ODI today? Not
maybe.
sure of
No.
that.
Yeah, possibly. But yeah, good insight to have to keep in mind.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think Charita Sri is a good shout for scoring a century today. May not be his 100th ODI, but would make for
Sri
good
Lanka.
viewing.
Yeah,
So
I don't mind. I don't mind a new player as well. Kusal Pera, you have already said. So one of the openers or Samara Vikrama, if he can again put up a score, but again
yeah,
maybe
the,
too many expectations there.
yeah, the game's already begun. So before we end
Yeah,
the stream, Nikhil, any predictions? First inning score?
VVS Lakshman almost came through today, yesterday into 284. So because they're batting first and I want a good game, so 276.
276. Yeah, I'm going for 265. I don't know why I feel that number is going to be the key. But yeah, on that note, thank you to all of you for joining. We'll be there for the review show. Hopefully,
Yeah,
one more person
yeah,
to help us out there. And yeah,
yeah,
please stay tuned. Don't forget to press the like button, subscribe to cricket.com, and tell
yeah,
anyone who you know who's a cricket fanatic to subscribe to our content.
yeah.
Reach out to us. There's also an Ask CDC section that we have started, so be there for that. Also, today is Monday, so you know what Monday stands for. At 8 p.m.,
Yep.
there's Monday Night Live. Where,
Good.
where we're being joined by a special guest, just like the last two Mondays. So please do tune in.
Yep.
Uday with some of his, uh, you know, comments here. Okay, Uday, that's something we'll take care of. This is what our producer
And
will take care of. But on this
yeah,
note, thank you so much. Bye bye.
and
Let's watch the game.
please do like cheers.